Welcome to G Fun Facts Online, the show that dives deep into the amazing world around us. Today, I want you to think about something you're using right now, the internet. How does this podcast get to your ears? How do you stream movies, chat with friends across the globe, or even just check your bank balance? If you're picturing a cloud of data floating through the air or bouncing off satellites, you're not entirely wrong, but you are missing the biggest part of the picture. The vast, overwhelming majority of our digital world doesn't travel through the sky. It travels through the deep, dark ocean. That's right. An incredible 95 to 99% of all international data is transmitted through a massive network of submarine cables, some as thin as a garden hose, snaking across the seabed. These are the unseen arteries of our global economy, the invisible infrastructure of the 21st century. Every single day, an estimated $10 trillion in financial transactions zip through these underwater conduits. That's trillion with a T. They power everything from cloud services and 5G networks to scientific collaboration and even government communications. And our reliance on them is only growing. Global data consumption is expected to triple by 2027. But this critical foundation of modern life is becoming something else, a new battlefield for global powers. The early days of the internet had a kind of geopolitical honeymoon spirit, a shared goal of technological progress. Well, that honeymoon is officially over. The seafloor has become a new frontier for strategic competition, primarily between the United States, China, and Russia. Countries now talk about AI sovereignty, viewing control over data infrastructure as a vital national interest. This has led to a split in the global network. The US and its allies are actively trying to block what they see as high-risk Chinese vendors from their networks. In 2020, for instance, the White House stopped a planned Google and Meta cable that would have connected to Hong Kong over fears of Chinese data interception. In response, China is building its own network. Through state-owned companies, it's pushing a digital Silk Road initiative to expand its own global connectivity and influence. A project called the Peace Cable, which stands for Pakistan and East Asia Connecting Europe, is a direct competitor to Western-backed cables. Meanwhile, Russia has been increasing its naval activity around critical and hard-to-reach cables in the North Atlantic, raising alarm bells at NATO. Adding another layer to this complex map are the tech giants themselves. Companies like Google, Meta, Amazon, and Microsoft now own or lease about half of all the undersea bandwidth in the world. Google's private Equiano cable runs from Portugal to South Africa. Meta's ambitious Project Waterworth aims to connect the US, India, Brazil, and South Africa. This private investment is great for building a more robust network, but it also blurs the line between corporate goals and national strategy. Governments are increasingly leaning on these private companies to push their geopolitical objectives, creating a tangled web of commercial and strategic interests. Of course, with so much resting on these cables, their vulnerability is a massive concern. Most of the time, damage is accidental. Between 150 and 200 faults happen every year, usually caused by fishing trawlers or ships dragging their anchors. Natural disasters like underwater earthquakes can also sever connections, as we saw in West Africa in early 2024. But the threat of deliberate sabotage is what really keeps security experts up at night. The sabotage of the Nord Stream gas pipelines was a wake-up call, proving that critical undersea infrastructure is a very real target. More recently, a series of cable cuts in the Baltic and Red Seas and near Taiwan have been investigated as potential hostile acts. Chinese ships were implicated in severing cables to Taiwan's Matsu Islands, a move seen as a designed to disrupt and intimidate without starting an outright war. And it's not just about cutting the cables. The threat of espionage is huge. There are fears that nations could tap into these fiber optic lines to intercept unimaginable amounts of data. Then there are cyber attacks. A successful hack on the network management systems that direct data traffic could cause chaos, rerouting or shutting down huge chunks of the internet. So what are we doing about it? The legal framework is patchy. A 1982 UN convention says damaging a cable is a punishable offense. But enforcing that law in the vastness of international waters is incredibly difficult. The path forward has to be multifaceted. It requires stronger international cooperation, like new security centers from NATO and alliances like the Quad. It requires technological solutions, like better seabed monitoring and end-to-end encryption. And crucially, it requires strong partnerships between governments who provide the security framework and the private tech companies who own and build the infrastructure. The silent, dark depths of our oceans have become one of the most critical and contested arenas in our digital age. Securing the world's submarine data cables isn't just a technical problem, it's a geopolitical imperative. The future of global communication, economic stability, and international security depends on our ability to protect this vital, unseen world beneath the waves. Thanks for listening to G Fun Facts Online.